I am so excited about today's live. I have got two people who are incredible. I mean, Jenn Budd has spent, she spent 6 years as a Border Patrol agent and intelligence officer in San Diego before she resigned in protest in 2001. She spent every year since then telling the truth about what she saw. Her whistleblowing fed directly into protecting the predators at DHS report. And she is the primary source who exposed critical incident teams. I don't care what anybody says, she's the one that did it. And if you don't believe me, go watch the documentary Critical Incident Death at the Border. It's on HBO. I watched it a while ago. I don't know if it's still there. I hope it's still
It
there,
is.
but you will see for yourself that Jenn Budd was the person that got the ball rolling. So, definitely if you are not subscribed to her and you don't follow her, what are you doing? You need like she's incredible. And then joining us today is Chance Meeting. He is a writer and filmmaker with Owl Media, documenting resistance in fascist America. He's been on the ground reporting at Delaney Hall, the Newark detention facility that's seen hunger strikes, deaths, hospitalizations, mass arrests of protesters and journalists. So today we are going to be talking about the cover-up machine, how Border Patrol and ICE built an entire internal system whose job isn't accountability, it's containment. So we're not just talking about one bad apple, we're talking about an entire system.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to start off with Jen, because you were inside the agency when the critical incident team started operating. So, what did that first cover up actually look like from the inside before you knew what you were watching? Like, how did you know I got to get the hell away from this because this is bad?
In my book, in my memoir, Against the Wall, My Journey from Border Patrol Agent to Immigrants Rights Activist, I talk about the first time I came upon these teams. They had been operating in San Diego. They originally started in San Diego sector in 1987. I did not join the agency until 1995, and then I encountered them some years after that. And I was not involved in the shooting. I was backup to the shooting, so I was north of the shooting. An agent had gone to check a sensor. He started after the group, following them. They turned around on him and came running back, and he got scared and pulled his gun and started shooting. And I was north of him, and I came running south. And what I witnessed was these teams called critical incident teams, which are even secret within the Border Patrol. So if you've gone more the administrative route, not been involved in shootings and use of force incidents, you don't know about them a lot of times.
Mhm.
It's a need to know basis. But what I encountered was these teams then come up and they make the scene look like the agent was attacked, at least in this instance. It's not to say that sometimes agents aren't attacked, but the majority of times they are not, because it's one of the safest jobs, because the
Mhm.
people we're dealing with are not generally criminals. Um, and I watched them. I watched them manipulate the scene. I watched them get rid of evidence. Luckily, in that case, nobody was injured. Nobody was shot. Everybody got away south to Mexico. And but I was kind of like, that's not right. and,
I imagine
and
it's kind of like, how like when the mob does like a hit and then they have their teams come in and kind of.
cleanup crew. That's what we used to call
Yeah,
them, cleanup
yeah.
crews. Yeah.
Mhm,
And I realized, like, they don't have the legal authority to do this, because so I'm a little bit different than most Border Patrol agents. I have a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Law, and I knew a lot more about law than most of the agents do, and I was surprised at how they taught law in the academy, which I didn't agree with a lot of
yeah.
what they were teaching. And, um, and then I just saw them cover up the scene and just make it disappear. And then later on, one of my best friends, Armando Gonzalez, who I always thought was a good guy, ends up as the supervisor of the San Diego critical incident cover-up teams. And I'm like, dude, do you know what those things are? And then what I realized is the agents that they put in charge of those teams are agents who have problematic backgrounds. And
Mm,
Armando had been having problems with allegations of sexual misconduct with female agents. And so they take those people because they got dirt on them.
Mhm.
And, you have 2 types of files in these agencies. You have your regular employment file, which is all your training and all your accolades and everything you've done, and then you have your dirt file. In your
Mhm.
dirt files, all the times you've gone to TJ to visit the prostitutes and all this other stuff and the drugs you've been
Mhm.
doing and drinking on duty and allegations and stuff. And so they had dirt on him. And so we see that over and over in these teams. And then when I got out of it, I started studying it and realizing, oh shit, this is a huge system and it's
Mhm.
done on purpose. And no agent in 102 years has ever been successfully prosecuted for killing anybody, whether a citizen or not, while on duty, and that's just insane because we're talking since, like, 1924. So even before the teams existed, they were doing it in my research when I go back into, like, the '60s and '70s, they were doing it in other ways, and we fill the oversight agencies that investigate us with our own agents. So we have
Wow.
them resign the agency and then go be investigators for us, and that's how we control the
Wow.
investigation. So, yeah, that's the genesis of the basics.
Wow. So Chance, like you just got back from Delaney Hall recently. So
Mhm.
what's the difference between what the agency is telling reporters that's happening in there and what you're actually seeing?
It's complete polar opposites. And this is, everywhere. They will completely lie about what's going on the inside, about what's happening with protesters, about what the family members are saying that they're getting from their people who are stuck inside of these concentration camps.
Mhm.
Um, like we know from the strike that happened. I just was down on the ground. I interviewed Gabriela Soto
Mhm.
for the second time outside of the Elizabeth Detention Center, where her husband Martine, who led the labor and hunger strike inside of Delaney Hall, was transferred to and has been kept in solitary confinement for almost 2 months. And they've told all kinds of lies about him, that he's a criminal. They're keeping him in solitary, saying that he's a danger to the community and everything. But it's really retaliation for organizing inside. It's retaliation for because when they were inside and they were doing that organizing, they had all these intimidation tactics for him and for their family members as well. For Gabriella, they would pull her to the side, waste a lot of her visitation time just interrogating and intimidating her, telling her not to go to the media, telling her to call off protests or anything like that. And the strike happened because of the poor quality of food that they were already receiving. And so
Right.
they were talking to, the guards inside, the administrators inside about wanting to receive better quality treatment and better quality food. And that's when they were served a tray of worms.
My
And
God.
so through serving, it wasn't just one thing where they were like, "Okay, we're gonna start this strike." It was, a bunch of small things, and then the retaliation for that complaint from the ICE agent was giving them a tray of worms, and then that's when they decided to go on strike because that was the bridge too far.
Yeah.
And they did, and they received a whole bunch of retaliation from that. With the protesters outside, getting brutalized by ICE in the streets, getting hit with pepper balls,
Mhm.
rubber bullets, tear gas. And on the inside, ICE agents went in and threw tear gas and flashbangs into their units
Inside the building?
inside of the building. And then they lied to Martine, saying that he was going to be released after a few days of the strike and everything, and brought Gabriella in for her visitation, and then kept her inside the detention inside of Delaney. Pretty much imprisoned her inside while they put him in a van and transferred him over to the Elizabeth Detention Center, which is like 15 minutes down the road, where he's been in solitary ever since. Now, I've interviewed her twice now, and
Mhm.
then the second time that I interviewed her, which was outside the Elizabeth Detention Center, she asked me if I wanted to go inside during visitation and visit with him and speak with him?" And I was like, "Yeah." Mind you, I was out there the night before taking pictures. There hasn't been any protester presence outside of Elizabeth, but I was out there taking pictures in the parking lot, and I'm getting yelled at by the guards and everything. And then they call the cops on me. And
Yeah,
so
I
I
saw
was
that
like, I
video.
don't, yeah, I was like, I don't know
Mhm.
if they're gonna let me in to the facility to go with you for visitation, but they did. And I sat down with Martine and her, and she translated for us while we're speaking. And he's telling me, all the stories of what he's seen inside and how the organization effort happened, and his mind space being in solitary, and it's absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
He's there's so much compassion behind his eyes, and he's not a big dude. He's a smaller guy, and just like the kindest individual to speak to. And the picture that the media and local elected representatives are trying to paint is that he's a flight risk. He's a danger to the community. All of these lies in order to crush dissent,
Yeah.
which was, becoming so effective with the strike that they organized inside. So everything that they're saying, I mean, I remember the first time I was out at Delaney Hall, and Governor Mikey Sherrill sent the Newark PD and the sheriffs out there, to protect protesters and give protesters a First Amendment space. Um, and they did the exact same thing that ICE was doing. Meanwhile, ICE was behind the gates of Delaney Hall, shooting pot shots into the crowd of protesters while the police were there, brutalizing them. And then Mikey Sherrill went on to the news the next day and are telling all of these lies that they're not using projectiles, which they were, that they weren't using tear gas, which they were, that they weren't brutalizing protesters like ICE was, which they were. They weren't beating people with batons, which they were. I was standing right next to Ian Austin, who I'm sure you know of. He's a veteran. He's been on the ground for a
Mhm.
very long time. And I witnessed him get shot 6 times by the police with
Yeah.
pepper balls and rubber bullets. And so to witness that, and then the next day see the Democratic governor outright lie and say that those things were happening
Yeah.
was ridiculous. And then even like the smaller things, the fire that happened on the ground at Delaney Hall, was trash, that because there's trash all down
Mhm.
the road in that area. Um, and that's not, all from the protesters. That's how it's always been, speaking
Mhm.
to the locals and everything. But it was the police's own projectiles that started that fire. Now, protesters did add to it after the fact, but there were images that came out on social media, and other right wing media took it, and they said the protesters are looting all the businesses around and starting a fire in the middle of the street. There are no businesses around Delaney Hall. It is a correctional facility, a transit yard, a waste management facility. There's absolutely no businesses out there. So, how are protesters looting businesses and then burning the things that they loot in the street? So, it's all these lies that you have to combat that are all part of this system that manufactures consent for these atrocities that we're seeing.
Right. Thoughts, Jen?
Well,
And
that's scary as
it's
hell.
the on the ground reporting is just so, I mean, it's so, I think you can give insight to why he's experiencing what he's experiencing, because 'cause I've seen it even with my own 2 eyes. I before I knew, do you live stream when you go to Delaney Hall on for
Uh,
Al Media?
Sometimes I've been to Delaney Hall twice. Once was for 3 days. This past time was for 2 days. I travel all over the place. I was Minneapolis 2 weeks during Operation Metro Surge. I went to Alligator Alcatraz 3 times this
Yeah.
year. I travel, and I try to live stream as much as possible. Now Instagram just took away my ability to live stream, but I,
Mhm.
can also do so on Substack, and I've done that a few times as well.
Yeah, even consider going on YouTube, because that's actually where I've been watching the live streams when it comes
Mm,
to Delaney Hall and when it came to, everything happening in Minnesota. Because Status Coup was, live streaming all of it, and I witnessed
mhm.
All of the things that you're talking about, I witnessed with my own 2 eyes watching that live stream. I'm like, "Holy shit, they're shooting the journalists. They're arresting the journalists. What the hell are they doing?" Like, yeah, I mean, it was just constant,
They
my
don't
jaw
care if
was
you're a
on the floor.
journalist. They
Yeah.
hate journalists. They absolutely hate you, and it's gotten to the point where,
Some
like,
journalists they like.
right,
Right.
yeah,
They're
some
not really
journalists, they
journalists, they're
protect and they bring
propagandists,
them
you know?
into the facility, you
Mhm.
Yeah.
know? But, like, I harbor a lot of anger, especially after experiencing and seeing a lot of what I've seen. So I will give it right back to them, and I will yell at them and call them who they are. And a lot of other journalists that are on the ground don't do those things or haven't done those things for a
Mhm.
long time. But I've seen as we've gone further and further, those same journalists start doing those things, start speaking back to the ICE agents in anger, in throwing back the vitriol at them because they're tired. They're tired of seeing what they're seeing, and they're tired of experiencing the brutality firsthand themselves as well.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just increasing anger and animosity constantly. And when you're out there experiencing it firsthand, a lot of people will tell me, like, maybe you need to clean up the rhetoric or things like that.
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, I don't think
But,
so.
like,
Uh,
Jim, that's the whole point, right? You know?
It's important to know that it's highly coordinated between certain members of the media that support them and those that are not. See, what we've
Right.
done down here on the southern border is kinda like what they say is like the lab for everything that's going on. I know a
Right.
lot of people say it's Gaza, but it's really been the southern border, and on the southern border, the immigration agencies have learned how to use and how to talk to number one, press that isn't going to want to dig too hard, or else
Mhm.
they don't give them access. That's one way they
Mhm.
control the media. And then they float everything. So we see this in like the Lorenzo shooting out of Houston, where now all of a sudden in the right wing little mags, they're saying, "Oh, we found little packets of white powder that could be meth, it could be heroin. We don't know what it is, but it could be fentanyl too."
Right.
And that may be why he acted like he did, and we had to kill him. And it's like that has nothing to do with anything. And I guarantee you, they did not find shit. They throw stuff like
mhm.
that. They find press that will put that out. I even saw in the raids in LA. So in the raids in LA, right when Trump was first starting to attack Iran and he bombed Iran the first time. So what Fox News in LA did, the local news, is they had it was like BORTAC and then ICE Special Response Teams, SRT,
Mhm.
attack a house. They said they had a warrant and that there were Iranian terrorists in there. I'm like, come on. Just happens to be right when Trump is trying to sell this, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, and the woman he was renting the house was an American woman, an African American woman, and she's standing out there and she's like, "I have no idea what's going on. I'm the only one that lives there. There are no Iranian people in there. They have the wrong house. The
Yeah.
number on there is not the house that they're going into. They're tearing up my house. They roughed me up." And you see the local media is videoing them because I have video from her neighbor
Mhm.
who documented the interview. And she says, none of this is going on. They have not found anything. But then the news report that night said, and I have that report too, the video said, oh, they were there to get Iranian terrorists and they did arrest some people and they left people and they got rid of all of her statements that they were wrong, that they didn't
Wow.
get anybody. But what their fans and their followers go away with, and still have people tell me this, well, they got Iranian terrorists out of LA, don't you know? And I
Mhm.
go, that is not true. So the goal is they know they're lying.
Yeah.
They know that some people are going to report other things, but they're only focused on speaking to a specific group of people, and
Mhm.
they do not care what the truth is. And so those people walk away with this in their mind. They think that Border Patrol has captured terrorists down here on the border. They have never
Right.
captured a terrorist down here on the border.
Yeah.
And yet they will walk around and say that they have. And so that's the goal, is if they just put it out, people will repeat it. People will say what they say, and it gives them it gives them the plausible ability to say, oh, well, see, they're all terrorists, they're all criminals, and then just be okay with it and not think about what we're doing. And that's what it's propaganda, plain and
Yep.
simple.
Mm.
With that
Yeah.
saying, if you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, and
Yeah.
repeat enough, people will
Yeah.
start believing it.
Yeah.
So what do we I mean, so you started saying that, journalists are now starting to, speak out more. Is that helping y'all, or is that just solidifying the lie even more? Because people are now it's this whole whoever's the loudest is who we're gonna believe. So do we need to get louder as independent journalists and writers and, protesters? Is that's what's gonna break through the bubble and get through the narrative? Because it is all narrative control.
It's going to be more ugly violence and people getting killed, that more white people getting killed, to be honest with you, because you see the reaction between the pretty and good shootings, horrible, and the response was what it should have been. But at the same time, we don't see people on the streets for the Lorenzo and the
Before.
Yoan shooting in
Yeah,
Maine, because those gentlemen were immigrants, even though they were in the system doing it the legal way, doing what they were supposed to do.
right.
They're not criminals and this and that. They are brown people and they are immigrants. And so everybody just kind of like, even the disgust, like you saw the Democrats really come out hard in the Preddy and Good shootings. And you
Mhm,
saw Homan and everything go, okay, we're going to back up. We're going to back up. But
mhm,
you have not seen that in these recent killings. And so the idea that most of the Democrats and most liberals have is, well, if we just go back to the Biden administration's type of immigration enforcement, we'll be good, or Obama's. And it's like,
mhm.
what I keep trying to tell people is the Democrats are just as bad on immigration. They just lie to you about it. Okay. All their
Yeah.
policies have been Republican policies, all of them, from deterrence in 1994 until now. And Obama did put children in cages. He did. He deported
Yep.
unaccompanied children. He was the deporter in chief. And Biden allowed the cover up teams to be folded into CBP, so he legalized them, and those are the same teams that they're using to deal with these shootings and investigations and hide the evidence. So I think it's going to take, quite honestly, I mean, I was talking to Wajahat Ali a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "I think it's going to take another 2 to 5 years," and I'm like, "Yeah, I think it's going to have to get really bad, and a lot of white bodies. We need more white bodies."
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I agree with you. What do you think, Chance?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a very long road, and I think we need a lot more people who are in the street willing to be outside of these concentration camps and having a sustained presence out there. Because there's so many of them that don't have a sustained presence, that don't have people regularly protesting out of them, that don't have mutual aid tents set up, that don't have medical tents set up, that don't have resources for families to go there and commune with their people, their community, and then help them go through the process of seeing their people, answering their questions. Because the people that work at these concentration camps, they do not care. I was just at Delaney Hall, and a family was denied visitation, and there were children on the ground crying, and the guard who worked for Geo Group was laughing at them as they were crying, and then called one of our photographers the sea slur and said that they were going to break their camera. And we're seeing them brutalizing people. We just saw one of them shoot somebody in Colorado. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that like the anger that a lot of these independent journalists are feeling is coming from constantly seeing that and then trying to hold people accountable in painting the correct narrative, and then seeing that narrative get brushed away by anybody who could actually hold these people accountable.
Mhm.
So I do think that people need to get louder, but we need as many voices as possible engaging, because there's a lot of
Mhm.
people who are burying their heads in the sand because it's too overwhelming. But I would
Well, we're not just
say,
talking
like,
about any people. We're talking to white people. We're talking to
right,
people
of
that
course.
yeah. So,
But I would say,
go ahead.
like, get on the ground and talk to the people who are
Yeah.
being affected, talk to the people who have families inside, and empathize with the absolute atrocity and horror that they are experiencing every single day.
Mhm,
And then you might feel ready to actually do something and be out there
mhm,
more often and have that personal experience to where you're like, okay, I'm no longer going to be on the sidelines because this is important. And that's what we need. We need as many people getting off the sidelines as possible and having sustained presence, because the more people that are out there, the less people that are going to have that are going to be put in danger. If you have a few people that are facing down this private military with impunity to murder people on the street, then they're in much more danger than if you have a crowd of 1,000 people who are out
mhm.
there mobilizing against them.
You're
Yeah,
right. I
and I
say
will say
always
though
we have
too,
to. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I say we always have to overwhelm them with our presence. Once you get enough people, they will not be able to contain you, and you can peacefully protest, but you got to like have a lot of people. And there have been some protests, obviously, in Houston. We have seen that, and we saw some in Maine, but they've been small, nothing like what we
Mhm.
saw in the Pretty and the Good shootings. And so, we just need people's physical presence to be out there. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And, it there's a way to organize, and I know, like, right now, there's a lot of fear being, perpetuated out there. People are afraid that they're gonna get hurt or they're gonna get killed, and I get that. Nobody wakes up thinking, "Okay, I'm gonna go to a protest and probably get shot." Nobody wants to see that, and the Alex Preddy and the, Keith, um Porter and, um, those killings that we witnessed is enough to stoke fear in everybody, and it's really hard for people to, again, wake up and be like, "Yeah, we're gonna go protest," 'cause we all want to, but it's like, what do we do to get over that fear? And we do have to organize. And I know a lot of people do talk about, well, they're targeting people who are organizing, and you're going to get put on a list if you start. Who cares? Just organize. If we
Right.
come out in overwhelming numbers, and what are they going to do?
If we're
Right.
all on the
If you're
list, what are they going to do?
Yeah,
Exactly.
if
Exactly.
you're building coalitions behind the scenes when
Hmm.
you aren't on the ground during a protest or going out into your community and building lines of mutual aid, that's when you get those numbers. When you're out there
Yep.
helping people and communing with people. So if you do that, then you know that you're going to have the numbers when you do eventually get out on the ground, and that's where the safety is, safety in numbers. So you won't have to worry if you're doing the work behind the scenes and building out your coalitions. That's the most important thing. Because if you look at all those instances, Alex Preddy, Keith Porter, Renee Good, so many of the others, there wasn't a massive presence of protesters around. There were a few people that were on the ground, and then the
Hmm.
big protests happened afterwards. But when the big protests happen, yeah, they sometimes, are shooting tear gas and pepper balls, but they're not shooting live rounds into a group of a bunch of protesters
Right.
because it's so much harder to control the narrative that way.
Hmm. But then it makes me wonder too. We had these huge protests for No Kings.
Mm.
Why aren't they at Delaney Hall?
Yep. Yep.
Like, this
Say
is
that
where
all
the
the
protest
time.
matters, is where the harm is being done. We have, and that's why, and I even wrote a piece about it. I'm like, I'm not going to a No Kings protest because it's performative at this point.
Hmm.
Yes, it's symbolic and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, I want to actually protest where it matters. I want to protest where the harm is being done. And right now, the harm is being done at these detention centers. I live in Texas. They're raping young girls at a detention center here. That's where I wanna be. That's where let's bring our No Kings protest to these detention centers.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand. I'm like, "Why aren't we protesting at the right places?"
Yeah. The No
And I
Kings
think
should have been the first step, that's the
Mhm.
building coalitions, and then people
Right,
should have put that energy towards something,
yeah,
actual directing the protest towards something instead of just going to a park over and over and over and over again.
right, right.
Mhm.
Jen, you had something to say?
Oh, I just, you see them back up when the protest or what they call it, like organic and spontaneous, like what we saw in Maine and so forth. So they'll get the hell out of there when people start suddenly coming into the streets. And what Chance is saying is very important, is that you've got to go out now. You've got to go out physically and join these rapid response groups. You got to go out to your immigrant communities and start making those connections. And I know everybody online, as we are right now, we're like, well, where is it? Where is it? Well, the first rule in resistance is not to talk about the resistance. Mm.
Mhm.
So you need to be physically
We're
out
all in a
there.
fight club. We're all in a
Fight
fight
club,
club,
that's
y'all.
right. So you got to go out there and you got to start meeting the people in the community so that when they do come to their community, which is going to happen with this election,
Yeah.
that then you've talked about these things in groups and things like that. Try and leave
Mhm.
your phones behind or use certain things because they will be listening to your phones and all that.
Mhm.
ICE right now just had new contracts I saw from Saltbox. Is that they have these vans now, and they're
Yeah.
supposed to only target one phone, but they're grabbing all these other phones, and they swear they're
Mhm.
not gonna do anything with all that. They'll get rid of all, and it's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you always say
Lies.
that shit." And so they can do this apparently. So far, it's not been tested without warrants, I guess, and so
Mhm.
they're gonna be doing that kinda stuff, and what it takes is actually physically getting out there in the communities, like Chance is talking
Mhm.
about, so that when it does happen, that it is spontaneous, but at the same time, you've talked about it and you know who's gonna be around you and you know other people are gonna show up with you and you're not alone, so, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this is the way that they're militarizing, they're using they're I guess they're militarizing our law enforcement kind of incognito. So instead of actually putting our military against us, they even have things where they can put drones above your house and they can get signatures of every single person in your house.
Yeah,
And they do that. And it's crazy because I don't know this for sure, but I know that drones are not supposed to be flown at night.
I don't
We
know
had
about drone law.
several drones flying over our house at, like, 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. I don't know if it was just a kid in our neighborhood testing it out, but it only happened twice, 2 days in a row, and was going up and down our street. So, this is the kind of paranoia that all of this militarization is putting into people because I was even a victim of the paranoia where I'm just like, "What the hell is that? Are they using that FLIR stuff on us?" And, but even the vans that you were talking about, they're launching that whole program here in Texas, and that's exactly what the military used. Exactly. When they were looking for insurgents in the Middle East. So the fact that they're using military grade technology and equipment on American citizens right now, should be incredibly alarming to every single person. This Big Brother system that's happening right now is, um, I don't understand. I don't understand where the outrage is right now. Like, where is everybody? Am I the only one going crazy here?
Well, I
So
think they're putting pressure on people economically. They're taking away SNAP benefits. They're taking away everything. It's making people hide. So we're going through this period, I think, where people are trying to decide where they are, what they need to be doing, and eventually,
yeah,
people hopefully will get to the point uh, of where they take it more seriously. I was watching the other day a conference hearing with in Congress with Joaquin Castro was saying that he was questioning a general about I guess they have hired Eric Prince's one of Eric Prince's private companies to go into Haiti. So apparently the United States, I didn't know this, the United States is in Haiti,
yeah,
apparently supposed to be gathering intelligence on gangs
mhm,
and they ended up shooting like, I don't know, 30, 40 something adults and
mhm,
like around, I want to say around 17 children. And they did it because they armed their drones.
mhm.
And so he said, you know, "Do you know that this company is capable of gathering intelligence correctly without harming innocent people or killing them?" And the general just said, "Well, I know that company, when they first started, they were having troubles, but now they're doing a pretty good job." And Joaquin Castro was like, and
Yeah.
just killed innocent people. So
Yep.
we've got like these, and I know we've had it for years and this and that, but just the fact that they just openly testify in
Mhm.
Congress and they're just like shrugging their shoulders and all
Mhm.
this is going to come home. All this is going to come home.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would not I wouldn't be surprised to see it here, with CBP has a huge drone program. I
Yeah.
was in couple of years ago, I was in the Rio Grande Valley in, McAllen Mission area, and I was at this old Catholic church. I was invited by, the father to go and go to mass. It's right on the border, right on the river. It's been there since the 1700s, and I hear this buzzing outside, and I'm like,
They're
what the hell
loud.
is that? And I went
Yeah.
outside and I looked up and there's a CBP drone watching everybody come out after
Mhm.
worshiping to judge whether they think they're an undocumented person or not. And I'm like, this is
Mhm.
insane. This
Yeah.
is insane. So,
Another thing too is with these drones, and they're using a source of AI in these drones when they're trying to determine things. That's exactly why that girl's school got bombed.
mhm,
Was because they couldn't the AI could not differentiate between a child and an adult.
mm.
Mhm.
And
And so
they use that for plausible deniability. I mean,
yeah,
they'll just sit there and go, well, we ran our data and our apps and everything, and it said it was okay. So what do you want me to do? Mhm.
Right.
right, right.
And
So,
that's what they did in Gaza, but that's what they're doing
mhm,
at, lower levels here with people
Mhm.
with like traffic stops with the flock cameras that are saying that people ran a red light or were speeding or
Mhm.
any type of traffic infraction when they weren't even in the state where it was happening.
Yeah,
So this AI technology of surveillance isn't even getting things right when it
it's
is
so loud.
surveilling people. But I think that we've seen across the political spectrum the biggest backlash from this administration for things like surveillance, AI surveillance, flock cameras, and then data centers being built. Not so far on the immigration front because people
Mhm.
on the right are very supportive of ICE without knowing that all of it is completely connected into the same system and
Mhm.
consequential to each other. Um,
Chance, is there anything that's not making headlines right now that you saw and you're like, "Why are we not talking about this right now?"
so much. I mean, so
Kill it.
much. So much is not
Bill.
so much is not making headlines. I mean, why are we not talking about the 1,200 people that were missing from Alligator Alcatraz? Why are we not talking about the children that are missing from Texas
Yeah,
detention facilities, where
yeah,
they're
where'd those
going?
girls go?
If there are, young girls being raped and getting pregnant inside these facilities, what happens to the children that are missing within this network? And if we're
Mhm.
connecting that to like the Epstein files, which I think should be more referred to as how all of global politics works files.
Yeah.
Why are we not talking about those connections? Because everything is connected within this same system of power. So there's a lot that's purposefully not making headlines. And a lot of the times you see the atrocity brought to the forefront with whatever narrative that they're trying to piece together without talking about the nuance and how it connects to so many other things that are happening that aren't being talked about.
Mhm.
So there's so much that is not making headlines at all. Um, so yeah, I think the brutality of these billion-dollar corporations that run these private prisons and are now running all of these detention facilities. I think talking about how their employees are using the same violent tactics of ICE and getting away with it. They're
Mhm.
brutalizing protesters and they're brutalizing the people detained inside as well, and we're hearing testimony upon testimony upon testimony, and no one is talking about it.
Right. And that still baffles me. I don't, like, what are they doing to people that are talking? Why, Jen, do you feel so confident and comfortable talking about things, but then another person isn't? Because I don't know. I've always said that at some point in your life, you have to face fear head on. to stop
Mm.
being afraid of it anymore. And a lot of the things in life, I've realized that once you start facing fear head on, and especially if you've got a whole bunch of people that are facing it with you at the same time, what the fuck are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's I do get fearful. I mean, people think, "Oh, she's this tough ex-agent," and this I'm a lot older than I was when I was younger and not in good shape, and I worry about it. I have my moments where I have to take breaks and stuff like that, and then I see people like Francesca Fiorentini, who's always out there, always just saying what needs to be said. I see Wajahat Ali. I see other
Mhm.
people, and I'm like, especially being that I was a former agent, especially that I know all this stuff and can explain it and dissect it and give some kind of context to it. And I just feel that it's my duty. I honestly, I just feel absolutely that it's something that, if I fail to do, then I've failed in life, and so I've known this agency, I feared this agency was headed this way. I remember my very first arrest, I wrote about it in my book, my very first apprehension. In the academy, they tell you that they're all criminals and there's legal ways to come in and this and that, even though there's not. And my very first apprehension was a mom and dad, a grandmother and grandfather, the 2, young children, and a baby, and I spent forever, like, searching for drugs in their ball caps and all this other stuff, and my training agent was like, "What are you doing?" And
Mhm.
I said, "Well, they're criminals, right? They're this and that," and he's
Right.
like, "No, it's just a family seeking, to a way to." And like, even the rhetoric within the Border Patrol, we realize is just bullshit, but I remember that the next day it was a midnight shift, and the next day, my mother had said, "So, how's your job? What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I had my first apprehension." And she said, "How was it?" And I said, "Honestly, I felt like a Nazi. I
Oh,
felt like a Nazi
yeah.
because this was a family and they were just seeking safety and there was no legal way for them to enter. So they crossed in the mountains out where I worked, which I don't know how these grandparents get across there, but they're strong as hell because they've worked hard
Mhm.
their whole lives." And it was just like, okay, wait, I'm not most of the people, 99% of the people are not criminals. They have no legal way to enter, and we've destroyed their communities, whether through our military and supporting dictators or through corporations destroying their resource. They have nowhere else to go. And so we just and as I learned what I was doing and what the results of the policies and laws that I was enforcing created, all the dead bodies and everything, including women and children, and it was just like, "What the are we doing? What are we doing?" And I was
Mhm.
like, for the longest time, I didn't say a lot because I had to go through getting out of my own racism and holding myself accountable for my part, my culpability in this and what I had done in violating people's rights and so forth.
Mhm.
And it just, it's just absolutely necessary. I wish more agents would come up and stand up, but they don't because they all have retirement pensions and they worry that that'll be
Mhm.
taken away. But there are a lot of agents that were in prior to 9/11, like I was, that are like, "This is insane. This is just
Yeah.
insane."
Yeah.
So,
So is there anything that we can do as, I guess just ordinary people to support the people that, like want to come forward, and do we get them in touch with each other so then they can kind of build their own coalition? Like how do we support you, Jen? Because I think you're incredibly brave and I think you're incredibly courageous and I admire you so much. So I just, like what can ordinary people do to support you and other people like you that are really trying to bring truth to light about this?
I honestly, I mean, just sharing my writing and learning how I talk about this. I try and not talk in legalese. I try and talk in very plain English and write in
Mhm.
very plain English for people because that's where most people are in our country and as far as their reading skills and so forth. But quite honestly, it's like we say about rape victims and sexual assault victims. We say believe the victims, believe the women, believe
Yeah.
the children, believe the immigrants. They have been telling us for generations what we have been doing. It
Yes.
is time to start believing the immigrants. They are not criminals. Yes, a very small percentage, yes, are,
Mhm.
but they are not. And I want to say too is like when we label every immigrant as a criminal, then you cannot focus on the people who are really
Right.
criminals, really try so because everybody becomes a criminal. And
Mhm.
so then they can hide more. What we're doing now is making ourselves much less safe. Right now on the southern border, they're telling everybody nobody's crossing. That's not true. There's lots of people crossing. They have the military down there so that the press cannot see that people are crossing and they are hiding all of the dead bodies. There are people who have been deported in this mass deportation and within a month they're back at work.
Mhm.
This is all optics and everything. They are not making us more safe. What makes us safe is that we inspect people as they come in and we support them. We
Right.
don't treat them as criminals. We are doing
Mhm.
more to make people hate our country right now.
Yep.
It would be treating them horribly because quite honestly, if you take my parents away from me and I'm a young child and my parents are here and maybe I was born here, so
Mhm.
I'm gonna be really pissed off.
Yep.
And we are doing more to create what we claim we are trying to prevent, and that's because it's all based what the leadership is doing now is it's all based in racism, and it's based in money.
Yep.
Money. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everything, Jen. Chance, you're another one that I completely admire, and you're on the ground doing the work. You're in the fight. You're interviewing people. You're seeing with your own two eyes. You're witnessing. What can we do to support you? Because independent journalists like you are priceless right now. I mean, we really need to support our independent journalists because you guys are our eyes and ears, and you are actually shining light on the truth right now. So, what can we do to support you?
I mean, just share the work that I'm putting out. You know, subscribe to me, to Owl Media, which is the independent media collective that we started, which is national. Follow, subscribe to as many people who are a part of that as possible. Follow what we're doing, and then use your own voice as well. Like add to the voices of people who are dissenting, who are documenting, who are trying to hold, you know, the people committing these atrocities accountable. I wanted to go back to something that Jen said about, you know, when she was an agent and then going through the process of acknowledging her own complicity in the system. When I started doing this, I had people who I knew who voted MAGA that I was trying to reach, who
Mhm.
kept telling me to, you know, get off my high horse and everything. And like, you think you're so perfect by doing this. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I
Mhm.
acknowledge my own complicity, like, as an
Mhm.
American benefiting from this violent imperialism for so long that has terrorized the rest of the world and created this issue towards that violent imperialism is the fascism that we're seeing now turn inward. The chickens have come home to roost, and the only path forward is acknowledging that complicity. So do the work, you know, do the work in acknowledging your own complicity because every single one of us are. And then support, you know, the work of what we're doing. Subscribe, follow, and share, and add your voice to it as well.
Mhm. And what both of you, what platforms are you on? So, because I know some people, they come to Substack literally just for the lives, but they're more, they're more heavily on like Threads or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So where can everybody find you guys?
Chance, go ahead.
I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram at The Real Chance Meeting, Facebook as Chance Meeting. YouTube, I don't publish on there very often. I need to. And then a lot of my longer form stuff is on Substack, including articles, things that I do for the Owl Media Substack page, my own Substack page, and then Fear and Loathing, or it's Fear and Loathing Closer to the Edge on Facebook, but just Closer to the Edge on Substack. I write for them as well. That's Gonzo Journalism. So yeah, those platforms you can find me.
Perfect. And you, Jen?
I am not on any kind of Facebook or Meta stuff because they ban me. Because I said I spread propaganda. And then certainly not on X or Twitter, although I used to have quite a following on Twitter back in the day. But so I write on Substack. I might be thinking about Beehive, but I haven't committed yet. And then I also put my writing for people who don't like Substack on JennBudd, JENNBUDD.net. So it's just a plain blog. My pods are here. They're also on Apple under Borderland Talk, which is the name of my newsletter. And I also post my pods on YouTube for the people who don't like Substack. I cannot get published anywhere. I cannot, even though I have 2 books, I am in an Emmy award-winning documentary on HBO. Nope, I cannot get my opinions published anywhere, and so people have to find me, so.
Yeah, that's crazy. But I mean, that to me, that tells me that you're doing something right. Anytime I see that somebody's being suppressed, or even my colleague Walter Ryan, he had such great growth, and then all of a sudden when he started being more outspoken about progressive independence and how, there's nefarious things happening within the DNC, and all of a sudden he's starting to be suppressed now, and I've even had my own issues with suppression. I was suspended and banned from I mean, I still to this day, I'm not super, uh, active on Reddit because I get suspended, like, every week. It feels like I get suspended. And then TikTok, I was on TikTok, and I got banned from TikTok.
Oh, me too.
Same. Yep. I got banned from
They
TikTok
said,
as well.
"You don't ever get to come back on."
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, they keep
yeah, our
chasing us
options are
around, and we keep
limited.
going from platform to platform and just yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah,
yeah,
but hey, y'all, it's people that keep getting suppressed are the people that we need to keep an eye on and we need to keep following because we're trying to get the truth out there. We're trying to say the quiet parts out loud. We're trying to say, "Hey, bullshit's happening. I got the scoop and I want to tell y'all about it." So
yeah,
just find Jen, find Chance, and follow them. Do what you're gonna do to support them. Every time I see things that you guys write and, I try to restack and share and everything just to try and show my support, but, thank you guys so much for coming on. We're coming up on the hour here. Thank you so much, for the chat. Y'all are amazing. I love this Substack community. Y'all are so supportive. It's so much better than TikTok.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
it
so
is.
For
yeah,
sure.
definitely show your support and keep telling the truth and, start organizing. Start organizing.
Yeah.
So if there's any final thoughts from either one of you?
Get outside, go to your communities, meet people, and start talking, seeing what other people are doing. People are out there working, and it might be just food delivery, it might just be going into, immigrant communities and sitting and listening, but that's where it starts. That's where it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
final thing?
Take your agency back. If you ever feel hopeless or like there's nothing you can do, know that that is very purposeful from the powers that be, and it's never true. There's always something that you can do. There's always something more that you can do. So find a place to start. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. I will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great one. Bye.
Bye-bye.